Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 8th, 2022 Public Works and Planning Commission meeting. Election day is today. I hope you have all voted. If not, I hope we're out of here by 7 o'clock. So for those stragglers, we can get our votes in. I have driven by 2 areas that we could vote, and the lines have been outside and long. So that is a good thing for Rutherford County. We have minutes to approve, and I'd like to call on Co-Chair Steve Piercy for that.
Chairman Cush, I have reviewed the minutes, and I would move for their approval.
All right. We have a motion. I need a second. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. All right, that motion carries. We're going to get right into our committee reports, and since Tanya has promised a short and sweet, I'm going to bring her to the lectern. This is Building Codes Report.
Good evening. I see some new faces out here. All right, I will get right to my report because it looks like you've got a big night ahead of you. Building codes issued for the month of October. We issued a total of 315 building permits. 98 of those were single-family dwellings. And just a quick note before we move on. This time last year, we were at 308 single-family dwellings. This year we're at 224, so single-family dwellings, not total permits. So we're down a little bit, quite a bit, actually about 30% or so from the same time last year. I will say, though, that last month we only had 37, and this month we had 98, so I think that's probably, usually we get a little bit of a push before winter, where the builders come in and try and get building permits and get footings in the ground, get houses dried in so that they have something to work on through the winter. So that's probably what we're seeing here. So for a total revenue this month of $139,170 in permit fees. We had a total of 1,741 inspections completed, and 9,147 miles driven. Does anybody have any questions on the building permits?
All right, seeing none, go ahead, Tanya.
All right, so that brings me to development tax and school facilities tax. School facilities tax this month was $509,550, and the development tax was $5,250. And again, that brings us to a cumulative total so far this year of $1,516,112.50. This same time last year, we were at $1,498,603, which is only it was actually a 4.5% increase. So you can see how the development tax is slowly making its way out. We only collected $5,000 last month, and the school facilities tax is increasing as each month passes. All that to say, we've seen a drop in building permits and an increase in school facilities tax. So it's going in the right direction.
Good.
All right, any questions on that? Commissioner Harris had asked me several months ago to try and document what the average square foot was for single-family dwellings that were permitted the previous month, given that school facilities tax is collected by the square foot. So the average square foot of single-family dwellings last month was 2,473, so 2,473. The average square foot of a townhome issued in October was 1,650 square feet.
Interesting.
All right, and if nobody has any questions, I'll move on to zoning enforcement.
All right.
In zoning enforcement, we had a total of 123 inspections done for the month.
Anything odd or any persistent issue that we can help you with?
I will say, and I've talked to, I know I've talked to Commissioner P a time or two about this, we have seen a huge increase in occupied RVs in Rutherford County. People who are pulling RVs onto the property, family property, vacant property, their own property, and moving into them. You know, I don't know if it has something to do with the price of housing, and but definitely within the last year, we have seen an exponential amount of occupied RVs in Rutherford County. So that's it.
Interesting. All right. Any, Commissioner P?
One thing, as she mentioned, she and I had some discussions, and one other thing, and I tried to call you earlier. I had talked to her and Doug, and also the sheriff, about a noise ordinance. I helped get a noise ordinance passed here in Rutherford County several years ago, but it's really not enforceable. And anyway, I've been in touch with Tennessee County Commissioners Association, and they've given me some more information about how we can get a noise ordinance that's enforceable. And anyway, I've asked Tanya and Doug and the sheriff, all of us put our heads together, and also Tennessee County Commissioners Association has a person that works this region. We can get them to work with us too. But one thing I'd like to see us do before the end of the year, when the legislation meet, is hopefully have something in place we can present to the legislature to have a noise ordinance that we can back and that will work for the state and is enforceable for the sheriff. And that's the main thing, is finding a way that it's enforceable and fair.
Yeah, definitely our struggle with the current noise ordinance is enforcement of it. Most noise violations happen at night, parties, and on the weekends when we're not at work. So we are not there we can't go out on site to validate the violation, to validate or verify that a violation actually exists. Usually we get the call on a Monday morning when the sheriff's department's been called over the weekend and they've told them to call us on the Monday morning. Well, on Monday morning we can't verify it. We can take the homeowner's word for it, but we don't have any proof. So it's hard to enforce and try and any kind of enforcement action on something you can't verify. And even if we can, our noise ordinance is written in a way that they have to violate a decibel level. So that noise has to be measured by a sound meter. And I have a handheld sound meter, but I've been told by I have inquired in other jurisdictions, but I've been told in other jurisdictions that, including cities, municipalities, that the sound meter readings are very, very hard to hold up in court because anybody with any education in sound technology or anything like that would be able to rip it apart, because they would ask you questions such as, what height was the sound meter at? What was the humidity that day? What was the wind speed? What direction was the wind going? Because all of those affect the way that it measures sound. So I'm told that they don't hold up in court very well. So decibel reading is probably not the easiest way or the smartest way to enforce this. We're probably looking at times, a time of like 7 o'clock in the evening to 7 a.m. in the morning, or something a little more enforceable, I guess. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Anybody have any other questions on this?
I'll make a motion to approve her report if you hadn't already got your motion.
All right. We have, yeah.
I still had a question.
All right. Thank you, Phil.
You thought it enough to mention about the RV situation, moving into the RVs. What are some pros and cons of that moving forward if that number were to grow or decrease?
Pros and cons from what perspective? From my perspective?
Yes.
So our zoning ordinance does not permit the occupation of RVs, except there's 2-3 exceptions. One of them being, if you're building a home on a piece of property, the zoning ordinance permits you to live in an RV while your home is being built, but there has to be an active building permit and there has to be active construction. It also allows you to occupy an RV if your house is under remodel or a remodel or addition to the extent that you can't reside in it, that the power's off or the water's off or something that allows you to live in an RV on your property while the work's being done. And there's also an exception in there for family members up to 2 weeks out of the year for someone to stay in an RV in your driveway should you have family visiting out of town. Besides those 3 exceptions, it is prohibited to occupy an RV in Rutherford County.
With the increase in exponential increase was, I think, the word you said. And are our zoning enforcement on that observation up, or have you observed it but not had complaints? What's the status of squelching an exponential increase in illegal occupation?
Okay, so unfortunately, the only option we've got is to ask them to vacate the RV and remove it if it's on a vacant piece of land, or vacate it and disconnect it from any utilities or anything if it's on their own property. Most of the time, people are compliant, but there's been a couple of scenarios where people don't have anywhere to go. This is their home, this is where they live, and so we're trying to work with them. And also, there's an RV park a little bit south of us on 24. There's one in Smyrna, but both are completely full. I mean, the only other option they've got is to take it to an RV park where an RV is approved to be occupied. And you can't find one. You can't find one that's got any vacancies. So it's a struggle. I mean, we're working with the people that we can, and the people that do have an option to live somewhere else are doing that.
What's the reasoning that it's prohibited?
Well, that's a good question, but it's been in the zoning ordinance for quite some time. Doug might be able to answer that question for you when he comes up to do his. That would be a good question for him.
When there is a hardship situation, could there possibly be some type of permit they could buy or notify you and maybe pay a fee to use it for like a 6-month period or something?
So not currently, but definitely we're working with these. We're not requiring them to get permits, but if there's a hardship scenario there, if it's a hardship situation, we're working with them. I mean, we're not putting anybody out on the street. Currently, no, there is not a permit that they can get for hardship purposes, but it might be something we might look into.
I had been getting calls, complaints about people that are doing this from homeowners that have gone through and actually followed the county's rules there, and they're upset thinking that their property values are going to be diminished when you have got somebody that's putting a trailer up on property. 2, she's found that some people are actually just squatting on property that they do not own.
Yep.
And going on without permission. You know, homeowners find out about that. Usually they try to evict, but then again, there's still a problem. But there's several problems with that. I think tiny homes,
And
yeah, another problem y'all are looking at. But
yeah, it's not going to be, a solution for it, but certainly, hopefully, it might help.
And Joshua, I would think it's a problem for public health and safety with temporary sewer and temporary water, and water's going to be in a holding tank, and
All right, and
going to
we
be
can
a
police.
hygienic problem, and the sanitary sewer is going to, we can't look after it.
So we can't police where they're emptying
so
it, where they're, if they're.
I think there's a lot of factors
Yeah.
that would, I think, historically have made it inappropriate, and I think it could get out of hand pretty quickly, with the exception of could there be hardships that we could look into that thus far y'all have been accommodating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see the argument you're presenting. I was looking at it at the fact that the cost of living in our county now, that so many people can't afford to live here anymore, that just a few years ago were thriving here. And I can see why a lot of people are moving into them to, moving back on their parents' land in that way until they get footings. So I'd like to look into some kind of way we could do some kind of permit process that would allow them that opportunity to kind of give them that buffer to get back on their
Yeah.
feet and find something. And that way it could come through, like your department, to verify if it's, a good fit or not a good fit. Kind of like some neighborhoods, many of them nowadays have the HOAs that just flat out restrict it, or will give that temporary until you find placement for So
In a s-
if we give that grace period, I think that'd go a long way.
Right, and in a scenario, there has been a handful of them where they have bought a piece of property to build on and done everything, to prepare to build, and then prices went up, interest rates went up, materials went up, and they just couldn't afford to start their house at that point. So now they're living in an RV on their property. In that type of scenario, I can see some sort of permit or extension or grace period or something being fitting, but I know who was it? Commissioner P. said something about, we do have RVs that just find a vacant piece of land in rural Rutherford County and set up their RV there. And they don't own it, they don't know the owner, they don't have permission to be there. So those are the tough ones.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept her reports. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you, Tanya, for your
Thank you so much.
reports. All right. Planning and Engineering, Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I knew it was too good to be true when I saw the agenda and I saw I was first after the minutes. I was all excited to get going, and then Tanya jumps in front of me, so I knew it was too good to be true.
Someday.
I'm going to keep striving for it. Just to kind of, right on the coattails of the discussion that just happened, Commissioner Dodd, Commissioner P., I think you all kind of hit the nail on the head with some of the things you said. Commissioner Dodd, as far as the public safety aspect, why that's not something that's in the ordinance right now, I think that's a lot of it, public safety. The fact that these are not designed to be long-term residences, they're temporary in nature. Now, that being said, there was some discussion of tiny homes as well. We actually have some proposed regulations going to the Planning Commission next week. Depending on the outcome of that meeting, you might see those here next month to allow those in certain circumstances in the county. Now, the other issues that we were discussing, of course, we would have to look a little bit more into that about a possible permitting for RVs. We'd want to look into that, see if there's maybe some other municipalities or counties in the area that have done something similar. We might be able to replicate some of that, but we'll definitely look into that. So if nobody else has any good questions for me on that particular item, I'll go ahead and jump into my report. Normal reports that I have for you today, one is the presentation of the available lot inventory. And just to give you an idea, kind of echoing what Tanya was saying just a moment ago, last month we did see quite a big jump in the available lot inventory, about a little over 200 lots as I recall. Because of the strong permit activity this month, you'll see there's actually a decrease, about 60 or so lots, because we did have some recording of a larger section or two. So that does offset it just a little bit, but this number actually did go down about 60 lots from last month. So due to the stronger permit activity for single-family homes, we did see a decrease in that. Single-family development tax versus the schools facilities tax, as she discussed. There's a report on your iPads kind of showing the breakdown between what's development tax and what's schools facilities tax. You'll see that I think this is the first month where the available lots in the school facilities tax has actually gone above what's available in the development tax. So again, as development tax, as those lots continue to roll off the chart, so to speak, that number will eventually hit zero, while the schools facilities tax will continue to fluctuate over time. Does anybody have any questions on that particular item? All right. Mr. Chairman, if that's no questions, I'll go ahead and move on to the rezoning report. Very good. We have 5 rezoning applications that are coming before you next week, 4 of which were pretty straightforward, one of which was a fairly lengthy hearing. The first of these is by Melinda Black. This is for property located along Las Casas Pike. She's asking for a zoning of from residential medium density to commercial services. According to conversations with the applicant, there are no current development plans, and so no concept plan has been included on your iPads. This is a speculative request in nature. She did make a similar request for property to the west near the intersection of Delay Drive and Las Casas Pike a little earlier this year. That was approved by the board back in April. During the public hearing, there was a neighboring property owner that did have some concerns, that expressed some concerns about the buffering between his property and these properties. There is an existing tree line there. There was some discussion about that. Of course, I did say that most of the time when development occurs, the developer will want to try to keep as much of the existing landscaping as they possibly can, because it makes more sense to keep that than it does to try to rip that out just to plant more. So obviously, we don't know of any uses or anything at this point, but when that happens, we'll definitely be cognizant of that. After the public hearing, the Planning Commission did make a recommendation for approval of this request by a unanimous vote. The second item is for property located at 6167 Shelbyville Pike. This is at the corner of Shelbyville Pike and Christiana Road. The applicant in this particular request would like to zone the property to commercial services, to have a gas station and a convenience store on the property. They said that depending on the septic soils available, they may have a small restaurant on there. That'll depend on the final soil analysis that they do get. These uses are permitted in the commercial services zone. The biggest concern we had as staff was originally the applicant's representative had indicated that they were looking to have a diesel pump on the property, which in and of itself isn't an issue, but that they were hoping to have like maybe some sort of a small truck stop, which I told them at that time the commercial services zone does not allow for that. At the public hearing, they said they really don't care about the tractor trailers. It really is more just for a gas station and convenience market. Again, they can have a diesel pump. That's not the issue, but we don't want to see provisions for that you would see at a truck stop, and things like that. This parcel does have frontage along both Shelbyville Pike and Christiana Road. The current access is along Shelbyville Pike, which probably is a better access to the property considering the limited frontage that's along Christiana Road. We can ask for a traffic study whenever we do see a site plan for this, should this application be approved. There wasn't much discussion on this request at the Planning Commission. Nobody spoke during the public hearing, so Planning Commission did recommend approval by a unanimous vote on that one. The third is a similar application, but this is located at the corner of Manchester Highway and East Gum Road. This is by Mr. Patel. They're asking for commercial general. The reason they're asking for the commercial general is they would like to combine it with an existing piece of property located right on the corner. This is only for an acre of land. There's an existing piece of property on the corner of Manchester Pike and East Gum Road, which was rezoned to commercial general back in October of 2019. We had seen some site plans for that particular piece of property, but nothing was ever started on it. They were looking to do maybe some sort of self-storage facility, or then maybe they were going to turn it into a boat and RV storage. Again, nothing ever progressed on that. So the applicant is looking to get this acre of land on adjacent property to combine it with the existing tract, mainly so it has a soil site, and then build a gas station convenience market on the property. There was some concern about the rezoned property, if it would be combined with the commercially zoned property directly to the west, which we answered it would. Again, following the public hearing, which there were no one speaking for or against, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a unanimous vote. The next application is actually a downzone. They're looking to downzone from light industrial to commercial services. The applicant would like to put a mini warehouse facility on the property. Mini warehouses are allowed by right in the light industrial zone. The issue that the applicant was running into is the amount of lot coverage. And when I say lot coverage, I'm talking about the area that is covered by either pavement or buildings in commercial areas. The light industrial only has a 50% lot coverage versus the commercial services zone, which allows up to 60%. So the applicant is asking to zone his property to commercial services in order to have a little bit more leeway into the development that they would like to do on that property. Staff didn't really have any issue with this. Again, this is a down zoning. There is commercial services zoning adjacent to it, actually with another mini warehouse facility, so we felt that this was consistent with that request. The applicant does know that they do have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special exception for that, so we made that very clear to them on the front end.
Doug, why is that a down zoning if you can have more coverage?
Well, it's not just the do with the coverage, it's also the amount of uses. Down zoning and the fact that you couldn't put like industrial type uses on commercial services. Yeah, the lot coverages may be a little bit different, but the uses are a lot more restricted in commercial services than they are for light industrial. The Planning Commission did recommend approval by by a unanimous vote. The final application, and this was the one that was more lengthy, was for property located along West Jefferson Pike, 1218, I believe is the address. Just double check. Yes, 1218 West Jefferson Pike. The applicant would like to use the property as a multi-use event, venue and rural retreat. Since the property is less than 10 acres, they do have to go through the PUD, Planned Unit Development process, for approval. The name of the proposed facility is the Riverside Wedding Retreat. They would, and I'm just going to read this right from the staff report, their mission is to preserve and share history while providing a beautiful wedding retreat, which will promote peace and public safety as its #1 concern. The rest of all that is on your staff report on your iPads. Events would include weddings, receptions, church functions, etc. They're also proposing to work with the Tennessee Historical Society and MTSU's Center of Historical Preservation to provide tours of the property. Information provided by the applicant said they would like to hold somewhere between 30 and 40 events per year. They would have a maximum number of attendees of 100. There'd be several employees at each event. One of the biggest concerns that was brought up during the public hearing was traffic at the site, especially in that area of West Jefferson Pike. She did say she would be working with off-duty police officers to help provide help with traffic as the events are underway. So again, that was one of the largest concerns that was brought up at the meeting. Access to the property was also discussed. They are actually using a proposed access drive off of Roanoke Drive because the property is right out the corner of Roanoke and West Jefferson Pike. There was some discussion about whether or not the access, there's an existing driveway along Jefferson Pike, if that would be an appropriate access, but after looking at that, we felt the better choice would be, especially if she's going to have off-duty police officers helping with directing traffic, would be that other access point. Landscaping and screening were also discussed, as well as our performance standards. This, like I said, this was a very lengthy public hearing. There were several people speaking both for and against this request. The concerns from those who were opposed involved traffic and safety along West Jefferson Pike, as we discussed, potential noise and drainage issues, and the appropriateness of use to the area. Several people also commented that they were okay with the proposed historical tours on the property, but not with the wedding or larger gathering events. Following the public hearing, the Planning Commission did have several questions about the same issues, traffic, safety, noise, and drainage. It was agreed that several of these issues would be addressed on an engineered site plan should the application be approved. After discussion, a motion was made that the request be approved, subject to the conditions of a sound engineer being retained to perform a study with the Planning Commission, given the ability to require more than what the county's regulations would normally dictate. Weekends only for the larger events, not so much for the tours, but overnight accommodations inside the existing house for the bride and groom only, no wedding parties, just the bride and groom, and the historical house would have to stay on the property. And that motion was approved by a vote of 6-4 and 1 against. I would anticipate at the commission meeting next week that several of the presentations that were made during the Planning Commission will probably be made again. I haven't received any confirmation of that, but just be aware that that's probably coming. So I know that was a lot to throw at you, and I hope you're able to keep up because I talk fast, but be happy to answer any questions.
On the Riverside project, you specified some of the negative comments. Do you recall any of the positive comments?
Well, most of the positive comments, and even this was shared by those who were opposed to it, they were didn't have so much of an issue with the historical tours, and they were happy that somebody was trying to preserve the property. But a lot of the people who spoke for it just thought it'd be an appropriate, well, it'd be a good addition to the neighborhood, I guess. So that was a lot of it, as I recall.
Any other questions for Doug? Commissioner?
I'd just like to go ahead and move to accept the report.
All right, we have a motion to approve his report. Need a second? We have a second from Commissioner Dodd. All those in favor, signify aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Doug, thank you. And I will second Doug's comment about the public hearing. It was approximately 80, 90 minutes long, so be prepared. All right. Bishop, come on up. This will be our solid waste report.
Chairman, if I may I have just a second for a personal statement?
No,
Thank you.
go ahead. Yes.
Today is my first wedding anniversary, and I would like to wish my wife a sincerest thank you for marrying me and for putting up with me. I love you, Jenny.
That's to get out of buying a car
She's
like,
done nothing
Paul
but support me as I help the county with their solid waste issues.
I said, is that similar to what Commissioner Johnson said last month at our meeting? He was doing that to get out of buying her a car. Is that
Yeah. You'll go
your
public.
motive here?
I need to get with Commissioner Johnson more often to find out his excuses and his ways around things, because, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Rutherford County Solid Waste disposed of 2,919.14 tons of waste from all sources in the month of October. 2,412.67 tons were from our convenience centers. 406.47 were from our schools. We recycled 360.67 tons from all our sources. At the landfill, we generated a revenue from brush of $5,669, and from tires, $1,760. That concludes my report.
Motion to approve the report.
Thank you, and thank you. All those in favor of this report approval?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Bishop, continue on.
Okay, I was asked last month by Commissioner Dodd, I believe, to kind of illustrate a little bit of the activities that are going on in the county, and if you bear with me while I try to figure out this technology.
There it is.
So, well, let me just keep mashing buttons. High-capacity compactors were delivered beginning last week that have been in place that we've been long awaiting for. Today, the receiver boxes came for the Bradeville location. I'll be picking up about 2 receiver boxes from the Shelbyville location where we purchased them every day we're operating. So hopefully by this weekend, we'll be in full stride with our high-capacity compactors and receivers. We were allowed to hook up the regular receivers while we're waiting for this, and one of the things I'm happy to report is in a regular receiver, I had a driver report a 14.6 ton load that he was able to get out of a convenience center, which is a 50% increase over the load that we're able to take normally. So I'm really optimistic about the data that I'm going to get back once we get all of these receiver boxes and everything in full swing. They're located at the Almaville Road Convenience Center, the Craner Road Convenience Center, Sand Hill Convenience Center, and the Bradeville Road Convenience Center. And we've got 6 more that are due to be delivered in March. Hopefully they'll be in time with the construction of the new convenience centers, at least part of them, so we can have some new compactors at those centers as well. So let's go to our center discussion, and we'll kind of go down the row on these. So here's the Leanna Center, and I want to show you the progress at Leanna. As you can see, we have the building is constructed. That larger building that's in the left-hand side of the left slide there, that is the building that's constructed to house the fire tanker for the fire ratings for the residents there. They've framed and have built the structures for both the used oil and used automotive fluid collection shed, as well as the attendant shelter, which is plumbed, is going to be very nice for them. Phase 1 is about complete. They still have to construct the ramps, which has involved us moving some containers around. We're going to put some temporary fencing around that so we meet my requirements for the permit for convenience center while working on the ramps. So I ask the public to just bear with us for a little while longer while we get those framed up and poured. I'm optimistic that we'll see this open before the holidays. Next, we go to Landfill Road, and as you can see, Landfill Road is just a field of grass with the construction entrance right now, but I wanted to, in fairness, show you that that's what's going on. So then here's Rockvale. Rockvale is second in order of construction as far along. The concrete pads have been formed and poured on the, I'm trying to think of this, I'm going to say that's going to be the western side of the road. And so the existing center is still operating. Once this center is completed, we've got asphalt and the power's on, we can get the compactors on this side. We'll move the entire operation over to that side of the road while the other side is being operated. Kind of a wider shot there. Then we have the Smyrna Center, which is located on G Street in Smyrna. And it is in the preliminary stages. They've started the forming. They have not poured yet. Sorry, I went a little quick there. They started the forming. They have not poured yet. I'm assured that they're going to be working on getting that formed and poured by this weekend. So then, I've also been working on a project at the Class 3 landfill to get us in compliance with our permit. We had some overbuild that happened during construction. Yes, sir?
Before you leave the convenience center locations, the new ones, why is the Landfill Road project where it is and not under construction?
That's a great question. The engineering firm was to secure a soil site for the septic system that was supposed to be on the site, as well as locate a method for getting water, potable water in particular, to the site. Both of those things, the engineer that was involved in that was working with us, he tragically passed away, and there were some things that were kind of left up in the air. We're working with the engineering firm now to overcome some of the obstacles that were left in that list. I think we've got a solution for the septic, and we're still working towards something with the water so that we can have that site suitable. As soon as I know more about what the status is and how that's going to move, I'll update you. It's been kind of a slow and painful process when it's come to trying to figure out this site in particular. Sir. So these pictures, and I know these pictures don't really do justice to scale and some of the things that are going on there. I had some spots on this landfill that were approximately 12 feet overbuilt, and we had that area that was open that was still not in its closed status. So, and we've been talking at length for a year now since I've been here, and before I got here, about this issue of this fluid that's been coming out, that's been expressed outside of the footprint of the landfill. We've been paying a large amount of money to a company to pump it, to take it to Nashville to have it treated. So in discussions with TDEC, this was proposed as a solution for us to be able to fix this. Also with our engineers that are on site, Triad, made this recommendation to build what is a containment berm and a leachate collection zone, if you will, where fluids coming out of the landfill, it'll reach what is a French drain style collection system, a 24-inch pipe with gravel around the outside of it that the fluid comes into, falls into this drain, and we pump out of a vertical pipe. The end result of the plan will include some collection tanks that will be there and have an automatic switch on the pump to where it fills into the collection tanks, and we can manage that fluid from that perspective should we need it. You can see kind of the area on the right-hand side there. That's a shot of the bottom of the berm, the ditch where the collection area will be. As of this morning, we had the gravel dropped off, get ready to set that pipe in the bottom, and I've got TDEC coming out there on Thursday to take a look at some of that stuff while we're putting it in. Any questions?
On the previous slide, please.
Yes, sir.
The debris in the background, what was its origin?
That's Class 3 waste, so it's construction and demolition debris from our Class 3 landfill.
Had you excavated that from where it was overbuilt?
Yes.
And so, because that looked relatively dry, it looked like construction debris at first glance.
Thank you for noticing that.
And were you, so you were gratified to see that it was not, quote, contaminated?
Absolutely.
Okay. And that's below grade, and will that be its permanent resting place, and you're doing French drains around it, and then you're going to bury it?
Bear with me, because I don't have a drawing for here for that. So the berm is built like this, and the waste is on this side. The waste is going to come up to the top of the berm on the inside side, and then it's going to be capped with soil all the way up to the top. So the berm is it's not going to be an exterior feature. It'll be a portion of the landfill itself, with that containment being on the waste
inside.
side. Yes.
Bishop, question. This material in this photo, this C&D material, it looks finely shredded or in small pieces. Did it come to our facility that way, or do you recall or do you know if this was shredded prior to burying?
No, actually, this is an action that has happened while we're in the process of moving it around. So this was that open face area that was a rather This is that open-faced area that was a rather steep slope, and we've walked that down and cut it back and forth to shred it up and grind it to compact it, maximum compaction there, and that's why it looks like that. If you cut into the clay on either side of that, you're going to find it's in rather large chunks.
Okay, gotcha, thank you. It would be nice if it was all that way, but it's not, is what you're saying.
Not yet.
Okay, gotcha.
So when complete, this berm, on the right picture, I'm just curious how deep that drain is, how deep that.
It's approximately 20 feet from the top to the toe of that drain inside.
I suspect it was plenty deep, but just the picture, like you said, doesn't do it justice.
It's hard to show it justice, yeah, I agree.
In geology, you put a hammer or a penny next to it for scale, but still that wouldn't do it justice there either.
Yeah, the dozer for scale, I guess.
Motion to approve the report with gratitude for having some visuals, and I hope it wasn't too difficult. And I think Adam Dodd has got to pick up his game, man. That was pretty good. He had notes and everything.
Dodd will find that out soon enough. All right, we have a motion and a second by Commissioner James. All those in favor of accepting the report? Any opposed? All right, thank you. Bishop, before you can step away, but before you leave.
No, wait, I've got one more question.
I'm sorry, Steve.
Under our previous administration, I think our committee voted to extend the hours of operation on our convenience centers and the days of operation. Do you have a timeline for having that happen?
It won't happen until after the construction is complete on the new centers, because of the lighting is going to be a factor for that, for sure. So what I anticipate this will be a site-specific roll-in. As we have the new centers come up with the lighting, they'll be able to stay open longer hours. And I haven't fully looked at how I'm going to staff and schedule that from our perspective, and I need to review some of the decisions that were made prior to me coming here for what specifically those days and hours were going to be. I know that we discussed 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., but I'm not certain what days. Do you remember that 7 days a week? So we'll have to look as we get the new centers up. I think Leanna is going to be the first one that's ready, so that'll be the first one that will be experiencing the new collection times.
The goal was to turn them back to convenience centers, convenient for the public. Now, are you saying all 4 of those sites will have to be finished and complete before we'll go to a extended usage time?
Well, I think that, well, it'll have to happen on the sites that are completed, but I don't think we have to have all 4 of them ready. I think we can have one, as they come online, we can extend the hours at each one as they come online, so that by the time these first 4 are completed, we'll have 4 that are on the longer schedules, and then the other centers will be in their regular schedules. I still have some data to collect on the compactor capabilities to find out what it's going to look like from a collection perspective, whether we want to do, the Sunday is going to be the largest issue, I think, when it comes to those extended hours. What my hopes were for extended hours during the week would eliminate or reduce some of the stressors that are applied on our weekend collection.
Thank you.
Sir.
Hey, Bishop, that led me to one more question. I'm just curious to know when all the convenience centers, the projection for construction is done. When do you project that to be finished?
Well, that's another good question. I can only speak to the Rockville and the Leanna sites. I anticipate that Rockville will be done mid-February, and we should see the Leanna site done prior to the holidays. That may turn up a little quicker. Smyrna, it's not going to be, once they get going with Smyrna and get the concrete poured, there's nothing that's inhibiting them. There's no phases that they have to go. They can build the entire thing. So we may see the center from Rockville and Smyrna online about the same time, and then I'll update you all on the landfill road facility. Oh, I'm sorry, the Christmas holidays. Beginning of the first of the year.
All right, Bishop, before you sit down, this is a great opportunity to give an update on Pratt Industries. As you know, at the end of the last administration, Public Works, or it was brought up at the commission floor to enter into a letter of agreement. That letter of agreement was passed around from attorney to attorney. We redlined a lot of items on that original letter of intent. Those first passes of comments are complete between attorneys at full commission. That letter of intent was then to be brought back to Public Works for discussion before it went back out for any discussion to full commission. So Nick holds the updates to the letter of intent, but at this point, we are in the RFQ tomorrow at 2 o'clock. We're opening transfer station RFQs at 2 o'clock. So the Pratt Industries LOI is available to talk about, but we need to decide if that needs to be shelved just a minute while we continue our transfer station, because that part of that partnership may be shifted or moved to our transfer station. We had talked about the land at Sanger Lane, right? Did I say that right? Singer Lane. We may have eyeballs for better use of that property other than giving that to Pratt. So we just need to decide as a body as to whether we want to continue our Pratt discussion or let that sit on the shelf for just a minute. I think last time Bishop and I talked about cardboard, that cardboard prices were at a near all-time low, and from a profitability standpoint, there was really no money in it for us to, at this point in time, to really enter into a partnership on board. But do you have any comment on that particular discussion?
Well, Chairman Cush is correct. The cardboard is trading at a very low price right now. In fact, our current collector, the Greif Company in Laverne, it's stockpiled, all their warehouses full. So there are some serious concerns about whether we're going to be able to continue taking it to facilities or what we're going to have to do with this cardboard. I'm monitoring this as it evolves. But from a return perspective, I recommend that we pause on any deals that involve us getting involved with trades involving cardboard. I believe that we may be in a position where we'd end up paying for this cardboard to be managed.
Thank you, Bishop. Mayor, do you have any comment on? Sure, Commissioner, Chairman P.
I've got a comment or two. The full commission voted for us to look into this agreement with Pratt, and
Right.
I think that's what we're obligated to do, regardless of what you think we should do right now. This is something the full commission has voted on and decided that it would come back to this group to look at the proposal that they come up with, or an agreement that we come up with. And yes, it may not be viable now, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking at it. You know, we were directed by the full commission to do this, and it was coming back to this committee to look at that. You know, just because some people may disagree with it, doesn't mean that we are not obligated to do that.
Mayor?
Commissioner, you're correct. The full commission did come for the full commission, but in conversations with Nick, if I understood our county attorney correctly, the county commission turned that back over to Public Works to review and review the contract language to be presented back to the full commission. So the position of the LOI, the proposed LOI, letter of intent with Pratt, is back before Public Works. So I think that is correct. And so I've been instructed by Mr. Christensen to ask the chairman in this committee to either suspend, pause, dispose, or in some manner make action on the Pratt LOI. And so I think that is what Chairman Cush is trying to ascertain. If this committee determines to pause, then I would assume that would still have to go back before the full commission. But as I understand it, the LOI is properly before the Public Works for determination. Does that make sense?
And I agree with you wholeheartedly, but, you know, my point is, I expect to see a contract offer from them and maybe a rebuttal from us to see what they've got to offer. You know, I can hear, and I've seen their contract that they offered at first, and I would have voted no on that. But I want to see what the contract offer is, and I think it's our duty to do that.
And so the mayor's office has absolutely no argument whatsoever with you or any other member of this committee or the full commission taking a look at the latest version of the red line document. I do think it's fair to say that I've been involved in this quite extensively for the last 60 days. And, you know, the mayor's office has some continuing concerns about the $1 a year lease agreement for an extremely valuable piece of property that's worth millions of dollars, that has a railroad spur that, according to our local chamber of commerce, is quote unquote a unicorn. And that after talking to Waste Management, that has very little value with regard to recycling or a transfer station, because a railroad spur only has value to garbage haul if it's approximately 350 miles or more away to a facility. That's not our case here. So we're underpricing the value of that 19 acres on Singer Road for a potential recycling site is the first problem I have. The second problem, which is even more important, in the agreement, it does not stipulate or prohibit that trash from outside Rutherford County or recycling material from outside Rutherford County cannot be brought into Rutherford County. And so those two provisions give the Office of the Mayor serious pause. Having said that, this is a decision for this body and the full commission to make, and it's my obligation and duty just to advise you where the Office of the Mayor is at. So that's what I've done.
I would agree with Robert if we're going the right way. Or I would just ask that we see the red line back at this body and have that debate then. We can go all those three directions, or move it to a transfer, but I just want to see the contract.
So if I may, please, then what the office of the mayor will do, well, they will provide the most recent and updated red line version of the LOI as expressed between county attorneys and the Pratt attorneys, and we will have that disseminated to you before the next Public Works meeting. And if it's appropriate, Mr. Chairman, we can have the appropriate debate at that time, and we will make sure you have that agreement with you in advance so that you have an opportunity to review the agreement before you come to the next Public Works meeting, if that is satisfactory.
May I ask a follow-up before? I lost my train of thought. When I asked for permission, blew my train of thought. So I'll digress for a moment.
I may have misunderstood, but I thought part of the red line was the dollar amount, instead of $1, that was going to change, or that was at least going to be looked at.
I don't think that was part of the red line. There was other issues that we had with the language, but the dollar amount was something that we would talk about between the two of us over in a meeting like this. But what we had problems with was just some of the language that led up to the pricing.
And we'd talk about the pricing once red line came back.
Once we got rid of, once we got the other language out of the way, then we could talk about pricing.
Thank you.
I would also add that, if I may, Mr. Chairman, that in the 60-plus days I've been in the office, I have not heard from Pratt one time.
Right. Commissioner?
I was looking at it, and I feel like it's kind of a bit premature for us to go ahead and go with the full commission's recommendation to go ahead and read into this at this moment. Because, I mean, you're sitting here now, I don't know any new information about it. Listening to Bishop's recommendation of basically a pass on it, personally, I'd say 30 days to even probably get through the holidays, 60 days notice, keep us in the loop like the mayor's offering to do, to give us the updated information of the back and forth and see how it fine tunes, give us a chance to really get our footings with the transfer station in place and connect the dots. And I really think that we might be a little premature in trying to force a hand at this moment. At the very least, a 30-day wait would be necessary to come back with next month with more information. At least for where I stand, I wouldn't have the knowledge or the ability to vote in either direction and would not be willing to do so at this venue.
Commissioner Chairman P.
One thing I want to make clear, the mayor and I are not in disagreement over what he says. I agree with him wholeheartedly. You know, I think that $1 a year for that valuable property is not something I would consider, nor is bringing trash in from outside the county. But again, we don't know until we look at these red line things and sit down and start negotiating. You know, you can put it off another month, and you can put it off another month, and you can put it off another month until our terms are up. But I want to look at getting something done here, and I want to look at all viable options, and this is an option that the full commission has voted on and said, hey, guys, look at this, report back to us. I think we ought to do what we've been told to do from the commission.
And to that regard, I think what Chairman Cush, and I don't want to speak for you, but so correct me, but what Chairman Cush is proposing is a pause that doesn't take the option off the table. It just, because of circumstances that have presented themselves in the last 60 to 90 days with what the office of the mayor and certain members of this body who've seen the activity at Middle Point, we believe there's a closure coming and we need to prepare for that. So we need to harness our resources to making sure that we avert what could be a crisis in the next 18 to 30 months. And so that is our focus with a transfer station. That doesn't mean at all that we can't revisit this as a viable solution to divert trash from a landfill, wherever that landfill may be, at some future date. I think what Chairman Cush is saying is putting it before the body to pause. And again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that's what we're trying to do here.
You're exactly right. There are things that have snowballed in the last 60 days that makes this not as intriguing as it sounded before, but I'm just one guy in this committee, so it's prudent that you all see the legal language, and then we can certainly debate it and decide yay, nay, or pause. I'll go to, let me go to, okay. Commissioner Johnson.
Well, it seemed like we were all in agreement during this discussion that we were going to continue, like Commissioner P said, continue on getting the information back to us, let us review it, and also continue with the transfer station. Now it seems like we're going back to pause and not looking at the Pratt issue. So I thought I was understanding we were kind of going to do both.
Well, I apologize for the misunderstanding, but the mayor's office, from its inception, has had serious questions about the viability of this particular project with regard to the languages which was in the LOI, the nature of the LOI, and the commitment that Rutherford County was going to make with an extremely valuable piece of property for a period of 20 years. And to my way of understanding, that is still in the LOI. And so I couldn't support, in its current state, the mayor's office could not support that LOI. However, being very clear here, that is not a decision that the mayor gets to make. That's a decision this body gets to make. And if this body needs to see the language of the LOI to make that determination, the mayor's office is more than happy to provide that LOI so you can make that determination. So, and the challenge is I'm probably, Mr. Johnson, Commissioner Johnson, I'm doing this on a daily basis, unlike some of the members here, so I have a bit of an advantage. So I want to give you all the time and space you need to kind of catch up so you can make your own determination. But we have no problem in letting you do that.
We can walk and chew gum at the same time. There's no reason to pause anything, and there's definitely no reason to pause on the other business that we've got, which is the transfer station. I'm not suggesting slow that down or anything else. I'm suggesting we accelerate both of them.
Okay.
Was it recommended by an attorney that we choose one way or the other to postpone this for a while or go forward?
Thank you, Commissioner Piercy. The way this came up in tonight's agenda, again, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is that the county attorney reached out to me. He said, this has been hanging out there for a little bit in a kind of a suspended state. It would be to benefit of Pratt and to the county to make a decision on do we dispose of it? In other words, take it off the table as an option going forward? Do you move forward with it, or do you pause it? But he was advocating that the commission and the mayor's office just make a decision because it's been, as he said, in a bit of a limbo. That's why this is before the body tonight, so we can get it out of that limbo status.
Please, Mr. Dodd and Mr. P, to get to see the red line items. I would make the motion that we pause the Pratt for 60 days, let them review it all, bring it back in here, discuss it, open it back up, and go, one way or the other, up or down. I don't want to sit here and go back and forth between this committee and the full commission, because I recollect this committee voted the Pratt idea down. It was brought back up on the commission floor and voted through. This committee knows a lot more about trash than the full commission. We have been exposed to it, a lot of us, for 8 years or more. But I will make that motion that we pause it for 60 days, give y'all time to do the redlining, if that will clear up something for the attorney, and of course move forward with our transfer station. We don't need any delay in our transfer station at all. That is our plan B. Without it, we have nothing.
And I would second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on that particular motion?
The only thing I'm concerned with is this word pause. You know, it's ridiculous to say we're pausing this. If we've got our attorney working on it, which the full commission has directed him to do, to get this information to us, why haven't I already gotten it? I mean, I need it right now. If y'all want me to hurry up and make a decision, that's good, because I'm ready to. But I need that information. So as soon as the attorney can send that to us, the sooner we can get it back. Now, this 60-day pause is ridiculous. Send it to us so we can look at it. And as far as this committee and how it voted, the committee was split voted, and I was a split person. And I changed my mind after looking at it and seeing what the contract was. I didn't like it, so I voted no in the first place here in the committee. And then I turned around and changed it because I realized we didn't really know what they were offering until we get a counter offer out there. So I'm saying this is ridiculous saying pause anything.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner.
if I heard correctly in the motion, Commissioner Piercy was saying that he didn't want any delay. That's what this motion does. We were not, in this whole discussion, we were not saying delay the transfer station. We were saying we want the information that was voted on already to come to us. We want that information to come to us, and this committee do their job as a whole, not one or two of the commissioners outside of the committee. Is to do it here, do our job on that information, and decide, is Pratt a good thing, or is then you decide, okay, we're going to hold or we're going to do away with it. But the transfer station going right along, that's been this whole discussion. It's not to delay it. The only thing I've heard is to either stop or delay Pratt. We're saying, Commissioner P. and I both are saying that we do both. We get the information. That doesn't mean we're wanting the information and we're going ahead with it. We'll get the information and we'll put it to bed. So personally, I'm going to vote against this.
So for clarity's sake, if I may, Mr. Chairman, we can either pause, maybe an unnecessary term. I can get you, I believe, I can get you the language, commissioners, before on the LOI before the end of the week. However long it takes you to process, read, process, and come up with relevant questions is entirely up to you. Whether it's 30 days or 60 days is up to you entirely. But you've asked to see the language, and the office of the mayor is willing, more than willing, to accommodate that request, and rightfully so. And so whether you make the determination at the December meeting or the January meeting is of little consequence to the office of the mayor and I believe the county attorney. So the use of the word pause is nothing more than to give you the time to review the information and make and generate informed questions and then make an informed decision. Whether it's in December or January, again, is no consequence to us and to how we move forward with the transfer station.
Well, Mr. Piercy, would you amend your motion to adjust it from 60 back down to 30 days? And that, because I'm understanding is the attorney is still negotiating back and forth. We're just in delay waiting to get the information, to regurgitate the information that we're found.
To my understanding, Nick and the attorney for Pratt have finished their deliberation, if that's the right word.
Okay.
So the completed document that they see it up to this point is ready for our review. So that can be sent out, like the mayor said, likely by the end of this week to all of us. So you decide if you think you can have it, questions ready for by the next meeting or the meeting after. That's what the mayor's saying. You pick a calendar meeting.
It's your time.
Next meeting or the meeting after?
Yeah, I misunderstood that. I thought that was just their first round of going back and forth.
No, they've been going after since
They finally got
since the
back
full
and forth.
commission gave us the power to launch. It's taken that long for the two attorneys to bicker back and forth about I's and T's.
Okay, I misunderstood that from the get-go, so now I understand what you're saying, Mr. P. So that does change that. Would you be willing to amend that for next month and give us time?
You know, after my suggestion was deemed ridiculous by Mr. P., I'll withdraw my motion completely and let Mr. P. and Mr. Johnson make a motion for us to move one way or the other, if you'll withdraw your second.
I'll withdraw my second.
I took that to be disrespectful, Mr. P.
My apologies. No intent to be disrespectful. However, I think we do not need a motion here. All we need is the information. You know, I think all of us are in agreement that we want to go ahead with both of these, especially with the transfer station. We're not trying to hold that up. We voted to do it. I think the full commission's voted to do it. Let's do it. I also want this information, which evidently you've already seen. Is that correct?
I have not seen it. I just know that Nick said it's complete.
Okay, well, bring it to us.
Okay.
We'll look at it. I'd say, I'm assuming by next month, if I get it within the week, I'll have time to review it by our next meeting. We should be able to, at that time, offer a motion.
I have one more comment toward the situation. The transfer station is to control Rutherford County's trash. Pratt made it very clear they could not operate their business on what cardboard we could furnish, and they would have to bring it in from other cities such as Metro. If our goal is to stop bringing trash into this county, there's no need of considering Pratt at any price. If we want to continue to take trash from 20 other counties and bring it in here, hey, let's talk to Pratt. It just depends on what your goal is for Rutherford County. Whether you want us to be independent on trash, take care of ourselves, or keep taking care of half of Middle Tennessee. That's where it lays right there.
Right. Commissioner?
I would see there being a correction on that verbiage. Recycled materials are not trash. Trash, to me, is trash and garbage that goes to the dump or whatever other communities do, whether they incinerate it or whatever. That's trash. Recycle is recycle. It's made into usable product. That's not trash to me. The second thing is, if this information was already done, it was ready, as was requested or voted on by the commission, why did it not come to us tonight? The commission voted for it to be done. To me, I know, Commissioner, you didn't get the information. None of us did, but you're saying it was ready. Our attorneys were saying it was ready. Why didn't it come to us tonight? We wouldn't have had all of this discussion.
Nick let me know earlier this week that the communication between the two attorneys were finished to this point, and if we wanted to go farther, we needed to have eyes on it. Yes, we could have got the red lines to you tonight. You could have taken them home, and in 30 days at our next meeting, we could have talked about it. So you're arguing about whether you get them tonight or you get them Friday. We wouldn't have been able to talk about them this meeting because they'd have been fresh in your hands. I'm telling you, this is something you don't just read in 5 minutes and have questions ready to go. So that's a little unfair question. Mr. Pearson, you're exactly right. Pratt's deal is we're giving them a really nice piece of land for $1, which is stupid. I told you that. I was against it from day one, and they're still taking in trash from out of this county. The second thing is, if I led you on about a transfer station discussion, a couple of you guys are molding those two together. Transfer station is not part of this discussion tonight. It is a separate thing. We're moving on. All I said was, we may not need Pratt at all if we're building our own transfer station. We can handle our own recyclable board, right? We may not need them because now we have a facility of our own. That's what I want you to keep in mind. So What we'll do is we'll have Nick send you the write-ups, the markups, and if you will, you can digest them all through the month, and we'll talk about them at the next meeting, okay? If we want to bring it to a vote the next meeting, up or down or pause, that's perfectly fine. All right? Is that fair? Is that good? Okay, so be it. Bishop, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Brooks? Yeah. Don't tell me you have like one item.
Okay. You're usually very fair about the scheduling, or the order. What I have tonight is a budget amendment that is moving money internally inside of our existing budget. This is not going to our fund ending balance for anything. This is just moving money around inside of our budget to provide a salary increase for all of our employees at the Highway Department. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
So it looks like $79,000 a year will cover it, or just $79,000 to finish
Correct.
this?
Reoccurring, yes. That's what it would take to cover this moving forward.
On a yearly basis. And so next year, you may find it in your budget, or you may tweak your budget. You'll incorporate this into next year's budget.
That is absolutely
We may not
correct.
see it, because you may have it
won't.
blended in.
Yeah,
Okay.
it will already be absorbed into our annual operating budget.
It
that
looked
you'll
like
see.
50 cents an hour on some of the single.
It's actually $1.
Dollar, okay, so you must have, okay, so $1 an hour across the board, generally speaking, or?
Yeah, for
Precisely.
every employee. Precisely, yes.
I'll open it up for discussion by making a motion to approve, and I make the motion quickly because I know how well you run your shop, and also know the pressure on your staff and you competing to keep staff. So I don't want to be rash in this. I happen to be part of this industry to a degree. So I make a motion to approve this request for salary increases.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion before we go to roll call? Yes, sir.
Human Resources, this has been bounced off of Human Resources? Are they been involved in the process at all?
No, currently they do have our salary schedule, which is something that they did not have when they were doing the complete study for the entire county. And so she's helping me gather data on getting things lined up with other similar, whether it be private or public or whatever, for similar work. However, I don't have that yet. But as you're aware, you know, there was a 15% kind of basically across the board for all the county employees, which Highway Department's funding comes from different resources, doesn't come from county general so much. So the thing that, the reason you see this tonight is because we have to have our budget prepared for our road board early, because it has to go to them first, and then here, and then full budget and full commission. So by the time April gets here, we had to have it nailed down, because at our first Monday meeting, you know, at our first meeting in April, the first Monday in April, we have to have that ready to present to our road board, that annual operating budget. So that's kind of early on, and this year was exceptionally so, because there was, at that time when we were preparing our budget in, you know, February, March, the 15% that actually wound up happening was nothing more than a rumor. So it was difficult for us to kind of build that in. So now that has happened, and there's also a step involved, I believe, maybe 2 steps involved, this gets our employees more in line with what happened countywide. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Superintendent Brooks, I'm not questioning the validity of it or
I understand.
the need for it. I'm just not wanting to bypass what process and procedures that we've got in place as it relates to our pay schedule and human resources. I'm assuming this goes to budget probably on Thursday night, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Could that information through human resources be available on Thursday night?
I don't think it's prepared yet. I don't think it exists yet. If you're talking about that portion of the study.
No, what I'm actually talking about is human resources input on this request. I understand you've got money in your budget to handle all this, but it would be a reoccurring expense.
Correct.
So it wouldn't be an internal handling of the next budget cycle. It would be all new money coming in next cycle. And that's the reason I'm wanting human resources, because I just think that us to make this, this committee to make this decision and forward it on to budget without human resources input, I would have a little bit of a concern about it. I want to know what Sonia has to say about this. She may be just fine with it, but that's what I'm asking for is we're talking about a pay increase for employees. And I think that's their responsibility is to give us input that this is fine and we approve it and we're okay with it. That's what human resources in my mind is for. So, I'm not saying that this is not deserving. I'm just saying, have we bypassed our process by not getting human resources involved in this?
I'm going to give you my opinion of that. I don't believe we have. I believe that the fact that the road board has I presented this to the road board and the road board has approved it. I think that foregoes HR's involvement in this. I really do. That's just my opinion, though. I mean, I've always appreciated the input from HR, but quite honestly, because of where they have been allowed to retrieve their information from, I don't think it's been accurate information when it comes to what we do. Equipment operating and it just hasn't been accurate. I don't agree with it. I never have agreed with it. So,
Superintendent, by statute, you can set your rates yourself anyway, if
Yes,
I'm
sir.
not mistaken.
that's correct.
And I understand exactly where Chairman Phillips is
I do
coming
too.
from. And
I think it's valid.
We all do. I don't think he's trying to bypass this. I think he's trying to keep his people equal to the pay scale that the county adopted. If he wanted to, he didn't have to ask us. He can do that. I mean, yes, you have to formally come in and when you're doing a transfer, but as far as how he sets his employees' wages, as some of these other fee officers, as you know, they can set their rates themselves. We don't have a dog in that hunt.
This is not the first time he has come to this committee for
That's correct.
a pay increase, and we have never questioned him or never asked for HR's involvement on this.
That's correct. And I do want to also add that I'm very well aware of the fact that this is a reoccurring expense. So I have made provisions and I have determined that we have that capacity with our revenue stream that we currently have.
Superintendent Brooks, I have a question, please, sir.
Okay?
What is the total dollar amount that you're talking about?
$79,080.
How many employees in your department will it affect?
That will be 67 or 8.
Will this $79,000 is a recurring expense?
It is. It will be
And
part of
is
their
this-
annual salaries.
Is this $79,000 already within your current budget?
It is indeed.
Are you asking the county commission for any additional funds to do this?
I am not.
Thank you.
That was the straight answers I was going to ask. I'd move to approve this.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions?
And call the question.
We'll go, roll call.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Anthony Johnson? I'm sorry?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes, you are.
Yes. Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Chairman Kush?
Yes. All right, Greg, what else you got?
That's it for now.
All right, see, it was worth the wait. You got $80,000. All right, I believe we are in other business. I have one thing for that. And Pettis, are you still here? Okay, good. Hey, scoot over a couple feet so I can see you, if you don't mind. Well, this next thing may concern you. This is a recommendation from our attorney, Nick Christensen. This goes back to that the old wart on our finger that won't go away, the Rockvale annexation that the city of Murfreesboro, if you'll remember, they came to our committee a couple of months ago, did a presentation about annexation near the school for a subdivision. And as you'll recall, there was no motion from this body to be made. And, you know, in our world, when there is not a motion, that dies on the vine. Well, the city, in their wisdom, thought that the fact that we said nothing for or against meant that we've got to be for it, since we said nothing against it. So they have continued on with their deliberations internally with the city to proceed with the annexation. So Nick Christensen thought that we should make it very clear of what our intent was, and there are two things that are kind of a hang-up. They have been through their first reading with the city council last week, and I believe they have another one, the second and final, maybe tomorrow. It's coming soon, I can't remember. But they had offered, as part of the deal, I believe $500,000 to go towards improvements of the road in front of the school that they want us to maintain. We kept saying, look, if you're, and Pettis, you are certainly an expert on this, so you can clarify, or if I'm speaking out of turn, please correct me. We said, look, if you want to annex the thing, you take the road too, right? They said, no, we're not interested in the road, but the road definitely needs some improvements. And they said, well, we'll pitch in $500,000. We got with Superintendent Brooks, and he ballparked between a $4 million and a $5 million potential cost for those road improvements. This is a TDOT state route, by the way, so we would have to get TDOT to okay the project, and maybe we could get some funding out of them to help with the construction. There was also some concern about whether in this annexation and in this interlocal agreement, that can the city proceed with an annexation process without our consent? And their attorneys say, yeah. We kind of raised our hand and said, well, what good is a intergovernmental agreement? Why do you need us then? Yeah, it should be unilateral. So we had requested that we get an AG opinion on that, and that's the route that Nick is going to take, is to suggest, or he's going to ask for an AG opinion on whether or not any movement can go forward without the other party agreeing to the annexation. But the other part is, in good faith, too, Nick suggested that, look, the $500,000 is way too small to even consider for those road improvements, and that we come back with a a $2.5 million request, basically split it 50/50 of the road improvements. If they want to go any farther, take that to their city council and say $500,000 is not enough, you need to pitch in $2.5 million for the road improvements. So that was the recommendation of Nick, that we do that in order to have that information out on the street before they have their second reading. And I guess that being said, we would, I guess, need a motion to yeah, okay, yeah. The mayor was asking me about, TDOT's, whether TDOT would even have any interest in making those improvements. Yeah.
My apologies, committee members. So the understanding I have from TDOT with the offer of $500,000 that they would contribute toward engineering of Highway 99 for the 3,600 feet in front of the Rockville School Complex, which is the elementary, middle, and high school, wouldn't begin the process if TDOT were even to allow us to do it. Moreover, it would take, even if we were to come up with all the funding, it would take years for that engineering and that construction to take place if TDOT permitted it. So the reason I bring this up is we're talking about financing road improvements in front of Rockville School, or about 3,600 feet, that may not take place for some time, given the experience we have all had with TDOT approving projects, whether they fund it or we fund it. And I think it's germane to the conversation.
Okay. And I don't really think we need a motion. Here's what I think Nick was really after. He wanted us to go on record to say that at our Public Works meeting a few months ago, that the fact that we said nothing, in our world, that means no motion, means we were not interested, it dies on the vine. He wanted me to reiterate that at this meeting, that we are against the annexation, and we don't think the $500,000 they offered was enough. If they really want to be serious, it would have to be $2.5 million, and B, that we're going to ask the AG to give us an opinion on whether it's even legal for them to proceed with annexation without our okay to proceed, that we agree with the annexation. Their intent is that they're proceeding anyway without us. We're saying, hey, time out. Two parties are involved here, and one party says no. How can you do that? So we're asking for an AG opinion, and perhaps that will delay the second reading for tomorrow night. I think that's the game plan. So no motion needed. I just wanted to get it on record. That's where we are.
I kind of feel like we probably should put a motion on it just to clarify a flat out, this is a no support on this, and that way there is no question at the next meeting that they hold that, well, it's still somewhat.
If I may, so I wasn't here, so you guys can help me. This body can help me. What was the motion that did not receive a second that is in question? What was that motion?
There was zero motion. There was no motion.
I was understanding there was a motion and no second.
No,
There was a motion, but there was no second.
No, sir, there was no motion.
Okay. So there was just, and again, this is helping me, there was just debate.
They presented their case that they wanted to annex.
Sorry.
Sam Huddleston and other people from the administration presented an interlocal agreement that none of us had heard of or seen.
Yeah.
It was presented without energy or assertiveness, and they said their case, and
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Okay.
We could. There were comments such as, "We don't even know what you're talking about." we can't respond to this. So there's different issues going on here. That interlocal was about collaborating on the roadway perhaps, but they weren't asking our permission to annex. I think they were they were strategically trying to get some support for the project, but it was an interlocal agreement. We got a lot of things going on here.
Then, Commissioner, that's my mistake, and I apologize. I thought there was a motion, and what I was trying to do is replicate that with a second and a subsequent action by the body, but there was no action, so Mr. Chairman, there's no action for us to take tonight as far as I can tell, so.
Other than to clarify,
Yeah.
because their attorney went on record saying that the fact that we said nothing was a show of support. Right, which is ridiculous. Which we're clearing up the fact that we have no interest in the annexation.
Well, so the interlocal agreement was presented poorly and received no enthusiasm or understanding from this body. Number two, they went ahead and annexed through their public hearing process, however that works. Right. And we had us lay people think that the state law says you can't annex unless it's approved by
both parties.
The other parties, the landowner, or if you're absorbing a piece of land, it has to be contiguous. It couldn't be an island. And so I think all of us were under the impression that being an island, it could not happen.
Without an interlocal agreement.
Without something. Okay, so
that's where the interlocal agreement comes from.
And that was not explained well, as I recall, at the meeting a few months ago, that we can't annex or we have to have your permission to annex. It was more presented as their way to collaborate on the road.
So to be very clear, they want to annex an island in Rockvale without annexing the 3,600 feet that goes down 99 to that parcel of property. The law says, and not very clearly, but our understanding of the law, Nick Christian, is they can't annex that without either annexing that 3,600 feet or entering into an interlocal agreement with Rutherford County. And so they're saying our absence of not saying that we were opposed to it meant that we were for it, so by not saying anything. And what this is meant to do tonight, I think, Mr. Chairman, is to clear that up. Our not saying anything didn't mean that at all. We're opposed to the annexation without an interlocal agreement and or the annexation of the property leading to that parcel in Rockvale.
And before I comment on that, do they have right-of-way on their sewer trunk line? Is that a city right-of-way? Is that city property or city easement that circumvents the intent of that?
It doesn't quantify as annexed property for the purpose of the law, according to our understanding of the law, which is why it requires further annexation and or an interlocal agreement.
Is this... So if the city proceeds and it's potentially did not meet the standard of the law, of
well, there's
the
disagreement
island law,
about that, but yes.
And if it proceeds with the second reading with, and the AG comes back with a differing opinion, can it be retroactively
That's what we're
dispensed with?
It certainly could, and so we need the county needs clarification on this anyway, because Murfreesboro is not the only municipality looking at doing this. So it's in the interest of the county to get an understanding of what the AG or the courts might rule in this regard, not just in this case, but in other potential cases where cities, municipalities want to annex property without it being contiguous. It not being contiguous is the point here. What the county's position is, what the mayor's office position is that we believe if you're going to annex property, it either has to be one of two things. It has to be contiguous, or you have to enter into an interlocal agreement with the county. And so the city of Murfreesboro holds a little bit different opinion. I believe we can reach a compromise in this. I genuinely do. And I'm hopeful we can do that without it being litigious.
Do we clearly have a recommendation from this body to get an AG report on that case specifically, or is that being in the minutes is sufficient? We've declared that we are seeking AG report, and we'll anticipate the city responding if it's not in their favor?
Nick said, I'm looking at my notes, he said, AG's opinion on whether statute requires it to be in place before annexed property. So he's telling me that he is going to seek AG opinion as to whether it can be done either before, or I guess either before or after they have their second final reading. He's trying to delay the second reading, which would make it much smoother. But if they went ahead and did it and the AG said, I'm sorry, you can't do that, then the deal's off. But Nick is prepared to ask the AG for an opinion.
But I think it's only prudent that we, whether it's in the minutes or by motion, that we
ensure we recommend that Nick get an AG opinion, and that in this specific case, it might have negative repercussions on the city's decision they're making on their second reading. So does that need to be in a motion, guys? I'm okay with it. So if I understand right, you're putting on record that, Nick, we need to find this out to protect ourselves and the city for a certain amount, that we need clarification on whether this can be done. Because truthfully, this is a precedent that it will be set. Because not just on this piece of property, but if Laverne, Eagleville, Smyrna wants to do a similar thing, AG's going to have to put it in writing right now. We need clarity. So I think, although Nick
I'd
has
make
said
a motion that the county attorney seek an Tennessee Attorney General's opinion on the proper process for the city annexing non-contiguous property.
Non-contiguous, yeah. Okay. Sound right?
Close, if I may add.
Please do. Please help me.
So the question, having asked for an AG's opinion before, the question needs to be very, very specific. And I would be hesitant to request a process question. The question might, but we know the law, because it happens all the time, that municipalities annex contiguous property all the time. That question doesn't need to be asked. The question is, can a municipality annex property that is not contiguous without an interlocal agreement with the county? That's the question. And absent an interlocal agreement, they can't annex the property if they're real in favor of the county. And yes, this is a precedent, because we have 4 municipalities in this county that from time to time annex property, and there needs to be an understanding about how they're going to go about doing that if that property is not contiguous. That's the only question here, is non-contiguous property.
I think that I'm going to withdraw the motion and ask that Nick present us the proper question, y'all. If those specifics are so critical to the AG even entertaining our question, then I don't want to put language to it that's going to get it kicked out. But
I think that's appropriate.
We need to. I request that Nick Christensen entertain acquiring an opinion from the Attorney General on this matter of annexation.
So Mr. Christensen and I have talked at length about this. Well, not at length, but several times. If you give Mr. Christensen the authority to draft the appropriate questions, to ask the AG to get the information, he can do that without guidance from the mayor's office or the Public Works Committee, to be quite honest. He knows how to do that quite well.
That's my request, just that the
Let
minutes
him
reflect
phrase
that we
the
want
question
Nick
appropriately.
It's a big issue.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And could we amend that?
That's no motion. I wanted to declare that's not a motion.
Well, I also want to somehow find wording to state out that for future reference, moving forward, any other municipality will have to have a yes vote, a defined yes vote, and make sure that they're clear. Silence is no.
So if,
Too far. Yeah,
so
it's
if I
too
may,
far.
once the AG renders an opinion, it's a ruling that has standing across the state of Tennessee without regard to the municipality. It won't be specific to the potential Rockville annexation. Okay? If that answers your question.
Thank you all. Any other comments, business, old business?
I remember Commissioner Pettis Reed, now chairman of the Planning Commission, making a lengthy presentation with signatures and everything before the city council, before they voted, and it didn't seem to do any good. They went ahead anyway. I'm trying to remember, has this question ever come before our Planning Commission? I can't remember it. Mike, can you?
No, I've been on it for about 13 years, and I don't ever remember having this situation pop up.
This specific one, was it ever discussed at our Planning Commission?
No, it's never made it to our meeting.
So we've never really said no to.
Yeah. Yeah. And Doug, Doug's here. Why is that? Yeah, please suspend the rules.
Suspend the rules.
Yeah. A second. Well, yeah, why, you're familiar with the case, Doug. Why has this not made it to our Rutherford County Planning Commission yet, or is it just too early in the game for that to happen?
Well, annexation requests and things of that nature that go through the city of Murfreesboro, I mean, routinely do not go before the county planning commission because we have no say in it one way or the other. Now, the reason Commissioner Phillips and Cushy were talking about, has this issue ever come before the planning commission before? The answer is no. That law that changed the annexation procedures in state law that allows for non-contiguous annexations like this just only changed within the last few years. So before that, this was never even an issue. You know, there had to be some sort of a connection between where they were wanting to annex and where the existing city limits was or is. So there was no reason for it to come before the commission, the planning commission. Now, everything with the interlocal agreements and everything, the way that the law says, again, the county planning commission has no say in any of this. So that's why I would say that nothing has ever come before the county planning commission on that item.
Thank you, Doug. Welcome. All right, I will bring the meeting back in session. Any other questions, comments? Otherwise, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.